Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Sunrise. I'm your host, Vicki Carmona. I'm here with Diane Raden. She is the board president for Stepping Stones of Hope. And you've actually been with this organization for about 10 years now, right?
Just about, yeah.
Wow. First of all, congratulations and happy anniversary, late or early.
Thank you.
No problem. And good morning, by the way. Now we're here to talk about a wonderful organization. Let's go ahead and start with the history.
Stepping Stones of Hope actually started as an individual organization. It was founded by two gentlemen, one of which is still with us, Dr. Charles Finch. Mm-hmm. When we call him Chip, when Chip was going through medical school, he volunteered in Iowa for an organization that did grief work with children. And so when he came back to Arizona to serve his residency and practice, he looked around for an organization that served grieving children, and he couldn't find one.
Oh, wow.
And so he knew of the need, and so he decided, along with Father Don Klein, to start this organization, and it was just a small grassroots organization that, was organized actually on his kitchen table. He was a single man at that point, mm-hmm. and put together a weekend program for kids to go off. At that time, it was in Prescott, and just kids to have a weekend away, that they could be together and know that they weren't alone in this process. Mm-hmm. This was in 1999, and we've come a long way with the grieving process since then. Not far enough as far as I'm concerned, but we didn't really talk too much about kids and death, and we still, as Americans, avoid that topic. Mm-hmm. But I'm finding that there is much more material out there, many more books out there for children. But in 1999, this was not something that kids got to talk about very much. So mm-hmm. kids came to camp, and they did that twice a year, April and October, and ran these weekend camps. They charged at that point $50 registration fee to help cover their costs. Everything was volunteer. We got a lot of things donated. And then the organization just continued to grow. More and more kids came. And in 2003, the decision was made to formalize a board of directors, apply for nonprofit status. Mm-hmm. And in 2003, we were granted that. And at that time, we became Stepping Stones of Hope.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely sounds like this organization has definitely grown quite a bit.
Well, we've gone from 2 programs, and now I'd have to think here a minute to think how many programs we have now. But we have about 7 or 8 different programs that we have. In 2003, we realized that kids were being dropped off by their parents or guardians, and then the parents and guardians would leave, mm-hmm. and the children were there for the weekend. And then after that weekend, we would send those children back with those same parents and guardians with no education really for parents and guardians as to how to deal with children who grieve. Because children grieve very differently than adults. And as adults, we kind of expect them to do what we're doing, and they mm-hmm. don't respond that way. They have a different process they go through. And so in 2003, September of that year, we formed a weekend on the same property for adults. So we have Camp Paz for kids and Camp Paz for grown-ups, and it was very, very successful. The adults were very grateful to get that information and understanding about children and how they grieve, and to have a space for themselves on the weekend to go through their own grief process.
Oh, wow. So you guys are definitely always adding programs, looking at what the needs are and trying to adjust.
We try very hard not to duplicate services that other organizations have. Mm-hmm. So let's see, we started out with Camp Paz, and then we built to a summer program, which came about quite an interesting way, mm-hmm. And that is Camp Samantha. Camp Samantha was a camp that was put together out of a tragic circumstance of Samantha's family. Samantha was tragically a victim of homicide in California, and Samantha's father, the Fouch family, actually put together a Samantha Invitational as a way of honoring her memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so each year they had this golf tournament, and they would give the money to a library fund over in California, and that was their way of honoring Samantha. Well, Clay Fouch came and traveled to Arizona on business, and in the way of a conversation met Chip Finch, Dr. Finch,
Mm-hmm.
and they discussed business. And in that conversation, Camp Pause and Stepping Stones of Hope came up. And Clay asked that the conversation be switched from business to hearing more about Stepping Stones of Hope. And I believe we have done, this is the third year now for Camp Samantha. And in July, the end of this month, we will have the third Camp Samantha, fully funded by the Fouch family and the supporters of the Samantha Invitational,
Mm-hmm.
which is an amazing, it's an amazing coincidence, and I'll just call it a coincidence because it seems that life comes together that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, you guys are definitely helping quite a few kids. About how many kids are affected by the death of a loved one? Because this is what they're dealing with, right?
Well, there's many, many. I wish I had exactly the statistics with me. There are more families that are affected by death than we could ever actually believe. And actually, single-parent families, as a result of the death of a parent, are numerous. And so we serve children that are not only in families that have lost a parent or a grandparent, but actually we put no parameters around who it is that you loved that died. You can come to camp no matter who it is in your life that died, that you're mourning a loss. We have several kids come to camp who have had a best friend die, and they're kind of struggling with that,
Mm-hmm.
with that loss. And so they come to camp and they work through it. And people often ask me, how do you know that this helps? And my stock answer to that is, I don't. I really don't know how it helps. I just know that children walk in one way and walk out somewhere different.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some change that takes place. And what we try to do at camp is teach children, and adults for that matter, coping skills that will help them through any change in their life. We experience every day change and loss. That's what our world is all about. So our world is constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
And if children can learn at a very early age how to cope with that, and different tools that they can use, they'll have a better life.
Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think it's so important for them to learn coping skills when it comes to the loss of a loved one? Because a lot of people have the mentality of they'll work through it, they'll be okay.
Pretty typically, especially in the last 5 years, I would say, I've been working in grief work for about 25 years, and probably in the last 5 years, I have seen more people coming forward saying, is it okay if I come to camp and the death loss actually occurred 5 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the answer is yes. It doesn't matter when the death occurred. But we're finding more and more people are putting their grief on hold. As Americans, we're great for the coping skill of denial. We love using that one. very familiar to all of us, and it is a means to an end. It's a good coping skill as long as you don't use it forever. And so immediately after a death, it's really necessary to just get through that initial period where there's so many details to take care of, paperwork and death certificates and all insurance and all that stuff that comes with a loss. But when that is over with, when that's all handled, that's when the real grief sets in. Mm-hmm. And it's an individual journey. People handle it in their own way, and it's important to have simple tools. Just handing a child a piece of bubble wrap and saying, when you're feeling anxious, you can just take this bubble wrap and pop the bubbles. Mm-hmm. And just the sound of the bubbles cracking helps a child just, I don't want to say calm down, but go to a different level of relaxation or letting go. Mm-hmm. So simple tools like that, taking a pool noodle and beating a mattress instead of beating your brother, so healthy ways of moving what's inside, the feelings of anxiety and perhaps anger and there's a whole change going on in the house or a change in your routine, and it's hard, particularly for a child, to not only understand that because they're not fully developed. Their brain is not certainly fully developed, and actually children will re-grieve as that development process takes place. So many times kids will come to camp maybe at 8, 9 years old, and then as teenagers they ask to come back, and which is the reason we created a teen camp. Mm-hmm. A whole weekend just for teenagers to come. We just finished that in June.
Oh, wow. So you guys are definitely doing quite a bit. Now, what happens with these kids if they don't learn how to grieve? Are there behavioral problems or anything?
Well, many times behavioral problems. I mean, we can broad stroke that and say, there are problems that come of it, and in an absolutely normal family, which I don't think any of us live in an absolutely normal family. We all have some abnormalities of some sort. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, there are definitely frustrations and things that go on besides death. I think death exacerbates all of those situations. So as a result of the death, such a dramatic change. I mean, it can make for a family who had maybe 2 breadwinners. Now the change is 1 breadwinner, mm-hmm. plus the added expense of, working out childcare and being the only person to take the kids to their activities. And as the kids are getting older, there is a lot of just financial ramifications of a death, let alone the physical symptoms that each person has, mm-hmm. mental, emotional. So we're dealing with 4 different dimensions of grief, and it's spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. And each person is dealing with those 4 dimensions in their own particular way.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely sounds like this camp would be very beneficial for kids and parents out there that are dealing with the death of a loved one. How do they get signed up? How do they get the ball rolling?
I always suggest to people the best way to find out about camp is to go to our website, which is www.steppingstones, that's plural, of hope.org. And there are several we've been privileged to have be in the news, featured in different news programs. And so we have a site that's just dedicated to that. And so you can go and hear about the camps. You can also go on the website and read about the camps. And there are pictures that, some people say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can look at a picture and see that camp is just not all about crying. Many people think, they're going to go to a grief camp. Okay, they're going to be crying all weekend. Actually, we have a lot of fun. Through that fun, we try to work metaphors for their grief. For example, we do a tie-dye activity. And so we ask the kids to do some tie-dye with the colors of the feelings that they want to express. They can pick the favorite colors of their loved ones. They can pick colors that they are relating to right now. And so kids come out making these beautiful colored T-shirts, and you see them all hanging on the on the clothesline, and it's amazing how everyone is different, and it's a great metaphor for everyone's process is different. So we all do it. We all have a similar situation, and we all express it differently.
Definitely. Now, you guys are a nonprofit, like you guys mentioned. Is there any way for the community to help you guys out, or can people volunteer maybe?
We actually have a site on our website that is for volunteers. There's an application process. The one requirement that we have is that you have experienced the loss of a loved one. So we get many social workers, many nurses, many people in the medical field, firefighters, crisis intervention people. Many of those people are drawn to doing volunteer work for us. But we have regular, ordinary people who just have the heart to help someone else because they want to give back as a result of their loss and their recovery. So we have kids as young as 14, 15 serving in setup roles. We call them our junior corps. So they come to camp and they do the setup and getting the paint all ready and the paintbrushes out and everything, the candles in a place where everybody can get everything so that everything's organized and runs smoothly. And all the way up to people that are retired, like myself, who find like a second career after their retirement.
Perfect. So there's definitely a place for everybody if they want to help out.
Absolutely.
So they should check out the website, which is steppingstonesofhope.org, if they want to learn more about the organization. And I understand that you guys are on Facebook as well, right?
Yes, we are.
All right, perfect. So once again, go ahead and check out the website. Find them on Facebook. And Diane, I want to thank you so much for coming in today and telling us all about this great organization.
Thanks for having me.